Are we on? Yes, we are. What's up, guys? McKinley Crain here. Today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free review of Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 1, Episode 8. Now, let's get into it. Anyway, so, in this episode, this episode, once again, focuses, on The Bad Batch and Omega. So, long story short, they're the main character. Well, not really long story, but so anyway, what I mean by that is the Bad Batch and Omega are, once again, as usual, the main characters in this episode. And in this episode, the Bad Batch and Omega are continuing on their quest to get away from the Empire and get away from a lot of bounty hunters and people who are trying to get Omega. And in this episode, it takes place shortly after the events of Episode 7. So the Bad Batch and Omega are still stuck on this scrap planet, and they need to basically find some stuff that they can sell. Well, they're not really stuck. I mean, they could leave if they wanted to, but they don't, because they need to they owe money to somebody, and they owe money to a certain person, and they need to pay them back. So they need to find some scraps that they can sell. And along the way, when they're on this planet, some visitors arrive, and some familiar faces are seen in this episode. They see some familiar faces in this episode, such as this one. Yeah, he plays a bigger role in this episode than he usually does in the other episodes. And there's a reason why this episode is the second best episode. Behind the first episode. The first episode is the best episode. The 8th episode is the second best episode, and the 7th episode of the show is the third best episode. Anyway, they're all perfect episodes, but those are just my top 3. And I love this episode, and I love this show. It's a perfect show. It's been a perfect show so far. It's been a perfect season so far. This episode was perfect. It had a lot of great and fun moments. It was just a really fun episode. It had a great story. It had a few twists and turns that I thought were amazing and awesome. It was very fun to watch. I love the chemistry between the Bad Batch and Omega. Their chemistry is one of the things that makes this show so great. I love the action in this episode. It was just awesome. And I love the story, and I loved where they're taking the series. It's great. And I also love the animation in this show and in this episode. Especially on the troopers themselves. Okay, well, not the troopers themselves. Okay, all the animation in the show is perfect and great, but what I'm specifically talking about right now is the armor, the clone armor. That's the best example of animation from this show, of perfect animation from the show. Their armor is what I think is the best the most carefully animated, or beautifully animated, yeah, thing in the show. It's just eye candy to look at their helmets or whatever. I love the animation in the show, but that's my favorite example of animation from this show. I've lost my words today. Anyway, and I love this episode. It was fun. It was awesome. I loved all the twists and turns, and I loved how intense it could get at certain times. Anyway, I'm going to give this episode a 100% out of a 100%, which is the equivalent of an A+. like, subscribe, join the notification squad. I will return.